know that the word eclair means lightning in French? Well, there's a few theories as to why this pastry is known as an eclair. So my favorite is traditionally eclairs, the rustic or some of the first styles of eclairs that came out weren't always as perfect as the ones that you see in France today. When the steam was creating that signature hollow center, you would see lots of little cracks on our choux pastry, and hence it looks like it'd been struck by lightning. Now, while we call this pastry eclair today, it wasn't always known as the eclair. That's right, back in 1850 is when it was first named an eclair. However, prior to that, this was called the pain aux duchesse. It was a little bit different to the modern style eclair that we have today. It was a finger of choux pastry topped with almonds. Now, this famous pastry was invented by the first celebrity chef ever, and that being Marie-Antoine Carême from France. And he was often commissioned to create these incredible banquets and pastries for royalty in France. So some of the most popular flavors of eclairs around the world, those include our chocolate eclair, which we are making today, a caramel eclair, and coffee eclair. So I hope you enjoy this recipe, and let's get started. So our first step is to make our vegan choux pastry, our eclair shells. So you're going to want to head over to your P7 Eclair course dashboard, and I'm going to head down here to our table of contents, select the choux pastry that we are making today. We are making our chocolate silk eclair, which will jump you down to that recipe there. And we are going to start off with the first training video, which is of course making our vegan choux pastry, piping and baking. And you just want to click into there, and that's going to jump up in a separate window to a private YouTube video. And once you get into that video, then you can start learning how to make your vegan choux pastry. So these are some eclairs that I prepared earlier, and I like to prepare my eclairs ahead of time. So after I allow them to cool down on the cooling rack, I put them in these containers and store them in the freezer. And you can freeze your baked eclair shells for up to 2 to 3 weeks. And it's a great way to prepare them ahead of time, especially if you are in food service or you have a bakery or are doing catering. And on the day that you want to fill them, all you have to do, take them straight out of the freezer. And I'm just going to put them on my tray here. And we're going to refresh them in the oven. So my oven is ready now. I can hear it beeping. I've had it preheating to 150 degrees Celsius. We're going to pop those in for 7 minutes. I do have the fan on as well, and that's going to thaw them out and also crisp them up again and make them nice and fresh. So we're just waiting for our eclair shells to cool down. I can still feel they're a little bit warm, but in the meantime, you can prepare your glaze, or I've already had some prepared ahead of time in my fridge. But because it's come straight out of the fridge, it's very cold, it's very hard and set. So we need to melt this back down. So I'm gonna put it back into my microwave in about 15-second intervals and stir in between each time. And we want to bring it back to the liquid form before we can start making sure that it's prepared at the correct glazing temperature. So I'm going to get this in my microwave now and melt it down. So I've just taken my glaze out of the microwave. There's still a little bit in the center that's not totally melted. That's fine. That will melt very quickly. And now what we want to do at this stage is re-blend it. So we don't want to add any air. I'm just using my immersion blender. Just make sure you get it under the surface. Give it a little shake to get any of those air bubbles out. And then we're going to re-blend this just to ensure everything is nicely emulsified. So now that's all blended, I'm going to transfer it into a more shallow container because we need something that we can dip our eclairs into. So I'm just going to put in one of these shallow containers. And I'm just going to pop the lid on and just set that aside for now. We're going to allow that to cool down. We want it to thicken up a little bit more so it's at the correct texture for our glazing. Now these eclairs in that time of heating that up have cooled down, so we can now start preparing these for our filling. So now we can start filling our eclairs, but first I thought it would be a good opportunity to open one up and we can have a look inside of what it's supposed to look like. So let's cut this guy open. As you can see, we've got a nice hole inside our eclair that we can fill with our cream. We have a nice crisp outer crust. Let's open one more up and I'm going to do it lengthways. Okay, so that's how it should look inside. It's nice and fluffy and we have a nice, very soft and moist, spongy texture and then a crisp outer shell. Now, because the eclair shells, the signature of them is being very soft and moist inside, even though when they first come out of the oven or when you refresh them, they will be quite crisp on the outside. It is completely normal that over time they will soften, especially once you have that cream inside. So there you go, we've got the hole in the center and then our nice fluffy interior. All right, so now we can start filling our other eclairs here. Now at the base, what I like to do is you can use one of these tips. I like to use that to make the hole, but you can also very easily just use a knife and make a hole. So you want to make 2 to 3 holes. I always like to do 2 just to start off with, but if you find that your filling's not going all the way through, you can also do one in the center as well. And we're going to be filling this with our chocolate pastry cream, our chocolate silk pastry cream. Now don't overfill your bag. It's much easier if you just put in maybe like half of your pastry cream to fill, and then you can always add more. Get some nice pressure, and then you want to hold your eclair and then pipe in with your cream. I find it's full when it starts coming out the other side. And then you can go ahead and just scrape the excess off. So see, we've got a little bit of excess. You can grab yourself an offset spatula or one of these pastry scrapers and then just scrape that excess off. We'll set that aside. Once they're all filled, I want you to go through them and just kind of have a feel of them. If you feel some that are feeling very, very light, then you want to go in and put another hole in the center. This one feels a little bit lighter, so I'm going to put in another hole into the center and just pipe in a little bit more cream just to ensure that it's full all the way through our eclair shell. Put our eclairs in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes or so, and that's also going to firm up that cream as well and get them nice and cold, so when we dip them in our glaze is going to set a lot faster, right? So we'll pop those in the fridge now. So our glaze has cooled down and is at the right consistency for us to use. If it does become a little bit thick, you can always heat it back up. If it's a little bit thin, then you can just wait a little bit longer. Now, I always like to have a little bit of paper towel just on the side because this part is a little bit messy. All right, so we're going to get started, and you want to make sure that you mix your glaze between each time you dip your eclair. So you want to take your eclair, dip into the glaze, just bounce it up and down a little bit, pull off that glaze, and then we're going to give it a little tap, and then with our finger we're going to carefully take that glaze, excess glaze off. And if it's not running down the side, then you're good to go. You can pop that onto your paper. If you've got a little bit of excess glaze, you can just wipe that off. If you feel the glaze is a little bit thin, so I can sort of see through this glaze a little bit, you can dip it in again. So once you've dipped a few of your eclairs, you can put your garnishes on top. So I have my chocolate pebbles that I'm going to put on top of these eclairs. If you notice any drips, you can just swipe those off. So I've got 6 with my pebbles on top. I've just popped them aside because on these ones I wanted to do a bit of a different decoration, which is just literally some grated chocolate over the top. And this is just some dark curvature chocolate. And I want to just grate a little bit over the top to give a nice contrast. Okay. So there we go, we can put those on our tray. So once you've got all your eclairs on the tray, you can just put those back into the refrigerator to set and then plate those up ready to eat.